Maps. I love maps. I have maps all over my house. But the most important map is wilderness maps, to get you through an adventure from start to finish without getting lost and dying. So today's video is a little different than what you're used to, and that is how I make my custom-made maps and where I get them from. This is everything from a large 5-week trip up in Labrador to a weekend trip here in Nova Scotia. Back in the day, I used to use the federal website where you had to go through this long process to find specific grids. Each of them is like $15 a pop, plus shipping. And sometimes the map that you got, your canoe route didn't even go through it, maybe just a little bit. So I did a lot of research on alternatives, and I came across Caltopo. And I absolutely fell in love with this website because it allows me to make custom maps at different scales, and it has a lot of different attributes that I use for making these maps. And I'm very happy to say that this is the first time I'm legitimately working with Caltopo as the sponsor of this video. There's a free version that allows you to do a lot of different things. And there's also a pro version, which I've been using for the last 5 years, which allows you to print unlimited pages of 11 by 17 inch maps, download offline maps for your phone in the field, and use Sentinel, which is real-time updates of satellite imagery. This is really cool if you're trying to do recon for ice out conditions. And for me, the most important is for doing black ice recon for wild ice skating. If you want to check it out, there's a link in my description, caltopo.com/northern. And if you're interested in the yearly subscription, I have a discount code, which is northern25 for 25% off your first year of your pro subscription. But let's get to it. I want to show you guys my entire process from start to finish. All right, start off by going to Caltopo and click Start Mapping. Here, I'll log into my account and go to my data, which has older maps I've been working on. For this example, I'm going to go to Suyuk, which is a trip I've been planning. I've already done the overview of the route, but to show you how I did that, I pressed Add and clicked Line, and you can give it a name. And from here, I just draw out my route. The more detailed you are with this, the more accurate your overall distances are going to be, which is good for overall pacing of your trip. Generally, for a trip like this, I like to bank on about 20 to 25 kilometers a day. No rest days. So here it is, total route, 460 kilometers. And then I like to look at the profile. The x-axis is the distance, y-axis is elevation, and you could toggle along the route to see where there's big changes in elevation, which is good to know for portaging, or if you're going down river and super steep, you know that it's probably going to be a lot of whitewater or a lot of portages. Okay, now that we've done that, I like to jump back onto Google and do a little more research on the route. This trip is in a Quebec national park, and it has this online resource where it shows its cabins. So what I'll do is I'll update my map with the cabins that are marked on the website. I'll also sometimes do this if there's a mega portage or big features that there's information available. The more information you can add to your map, the more accurate it's going to be in the field. And for this trip, one of these cabins might save our butt in a big thunderstorm. I will mention that Caltopo, you could use different base layers for your trip planning and printing. I prefer using scanned topo maps, and sometimes I'll stack that layer with global imagery and toggle back and forth if there's a certain feature I want to look at. But for printing, I go scan topo, and for map overlays, I click slope angle shading because I like the additional visual that it gives in the field. It also is a bit of a warning if I plan on portaging through a section that's shaded red. It's probably not going to happen. I'm only scratching the surface with what you can do on Caltopo. I'm a simple guy. I like making simple maps, but if you really want to geek out, you can really dig deep into the mapping. So now for printing the map, I remove the markers and lines, and I'll explain why I do this later on in the video. But once I do that, I press print, and it takes me to this next page. So this red box is a page of my map. I want 11 by 17. My scale is 1 to 50,000, but I can custom make them if I wanted to. But I prefer the 1 by 50,000 scale. Let's call this route the Nastapoka River. I've been flip-flopping with the name. You can have the UTM grid, and now I'm going to line it up. These can be either landscape or portrait. And one important thing here is you always want to make sure that there's an overlap between maps. 9 times out of 10, if I get lost in the field, it's between maps. And later on in the video, I'm going to show you a trick on how to avoid this. But take your time, make sure that your route is within the maps and that there's an overlap. Okay, cool. Each map is 11 by 17, 1 to 50,000. I think with the free version, you're limited to how many pages you could use. So for a big trip like this, I really want the pro version. So then I'll print it as a PDF package. I'm a big advocate of having my main map as a physical copy and my backup map as an offline map on my phone. On the bottom of each map, it'll show the title, the page number, the scale, and the magnetic north, which is a cool feature if you're going to be out there with a compass. The next step is marking out the route. I like to use an actual highlighter. You can do this online through Caltopo, but I find if I draw it on, I get a much better understanding of the route. So we always want to stay close to shore, bring her in. In reality, we might not follow these routes exactly, but it just gives us something to work with once we're out there. So the next step is figuring out where the overlay of each map is. This is going to help for the next step, which you'll see later. But what I like to do is once I find that overlap, I create a dash and an arrow in the direction that we're traveling. So I start by, I kind of just overlap to see where that may be using a marker. And here there's a little point, so I'll use that. And you'll see why this is important. There's a nice little peninsula there. You always want a nice little indicator. Once you mark out the margins of every map, the next step helps with pacing when you're on the trip. So this is measuring out the total distance and the distance per map. And the way I do this is pretty old school. And I know a lot of you guys are gonna say, why the heck aren't you doing this online? But what I like to do is measure out the distance with a string. This is marked out in 5 kilometer sections, and I'm gonna trace the route we highlighted to come up with the total distance. And I know you guys are gonna be saying, Noah, you're a Luddite, why don't you just do this online? It's so much faster and quicker. Well, I'm gonna tell you, when you're marking this up with a string, you will have an intimate relationship with this map. You're gonna go around every peninsula and you're gonna be feeling every contour. It's a little tedious, but it's worth it. So this map is 24 kilometers. And by the end of this map, it'll be 8 from the first plus 24 from this, which is 32. And this is map 2 of 23. This is why I have these dashes, because that's where I measure the distance from. And you might be off by a few kilometers at the end of the day, but it doesn't really matter. 14 plus 48, 62. This is map 4 of 23. This helps with pacing when you're out on the river. It'll help you know if you're behind schedule, ahead of schedule. So I'll do this for the 23 maps. We'll report back. We'll get a final distance, and then we can calculate our daily distances. Final map, 465. So 465 kilometers over 20 days is 23 kilometers a day. So even though this is very crude, we're pretty close to what I measured on Caltopo. And now I know the map so much better. Okay, so a quick summary of the steps. Use an online mapping service to custom make your maps. Physically draw out your route on your map. On each map, create a dash where there's overlap. Mark up the distance on each map and the total distance, which is gonna help you with your pacing and to make sure that you finish the trip on time. And a final bonus, have backup offline maps on your phone just in case you lose your physical copies. And that's it. Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you guys like these instructional videos, let me know in the comments if there's any others you'd like me to do. Guys, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.